Welcome back to another episode of Real, Relevant, and Righteous. I'm Alexandria. Let's get into it. Normally when we hear about Hannah, we make the connection with Samuel and the story of her being barren. So, the message that I normally hear, they talk about her in prayer and her travail to have a child. I'm very familiar with the story, so I was shocked when I read it the other day and saw something new. How many of you know that Hannah had more children after Samuel? That's right, she did. She had three sons and two daughters after Samuel. So today, that's what I will be focusing on, how there is more attached to your first and the domino effect of your first. So to remind you of the story of Hannah, the Lord made her barren that she couldn't have children with her husband Elkanah. Year after year, they went up to worship and to sacrifice at Shiloh. From this story, we see that the family would go up to Shiloh year after year. So when Hannah petitioned to God, it was for many years. This shows that Hannah was consistently seeking God for a child, though she was not seeing the results. She's an example of praying without ceasing. So during this time at Shiloh, Hannah would be provoked by Peninnah, which was Elkanah's other wife. First Samuel 1 verse 6 says, "And her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb." So I did a little bit of research just to put in context or explain to you why it would be necessary or why it would be important for Hannah to have a child. So I looked up barrenness and biblical history. Barrenness during biblical history threatens women identity, their lineage, and their status. So to further explain these, I'm gonna break down what it means for Hannah's identity, what it meant for her lineage, and what it meant for her status, right? So when it comes to lineage, there's two sides: the biblical side and the matrilineal side. The biblical lineage would mean that the family line would carry out the religious responsibilities given to the chosen family from God, and the matrilineal speaks to mothers having children as evidence of their existence. And lastly, the status, this would be the competition between the two wives and their position in the relationship. So, from all angles, with Hannah being barren, we can see how this was negatively affecting her. So, on this visit to Shiloh, Hannah was praying to God. She vowed to the Lord that if she was given a son, she would give him back to the Lord all the days of his life. First Samuel 1 verses 11. So, she asked for a son, just one son, just one child, yet she decided that if the Lord would open her womb, she's going to give him back and dedicate him to God. The prayers from previous times aren't mentioned in the chapter with Hannah, but it was this one that touched the Lord. When you look at this prayer more deeply, you can see that the prayer had humility and selflessness wrapped together. So there was humility and selflessness wrapped in this prayer. So with the child being born, her status, her lineage, and her identity would be more secure and would increase. But if she gives him to the Lord, if she gives the one child to the Lord, it's as though she would be back at square one. In Hannah's prayer, she also could have said, "Lord, give me a child so that Peninnah can stop mocking me." Remember, it's the Lord who shut her womb. And if you think about it, if this was happening to you, right? If someone is mocking you or showing off their possessions and you cannot have that, but you want that. You want the thing that they have, but you cannot have it, and it's the Lord who is stopping you from having it. It's just like, Lord, can this happen so that person can stop bothering me, so that person can get out of my face, so that person won't be a bother to me anymore, right? And I was thinking of like when we want to do things, when we want to produce, Sometimes we want it badly as well. So if we want something badly, something that we can learn from Hannah is that we need to be praying consistently. We need to pray without ceasing. If the motives are good, we will ask God in humility. And if we get our first, whether it's a child, a business, a job, a car, will that be an idol in our life, or will God get the glory from it? So that is something that you need to sit down and say, like, I am about to do my first business. Why am I doing this? How am I asking God for it? What are the motives that I have behind it? Right? And we see the evidence in Samuel's life how God got the glory from his life. Um, 1 Samuel 2, verse 21 says, Indeed, the Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters, and the boy Samuel grew in the presence of the Lord. But it's also interesting that I never ever noticed that she had more children. After Samuel, she had 5 more children. Listen, there is a reason why your first is hard, but check your motives. Maybe the first one is hard because of what is attached to it. Maybe your first one is hard because it will open the gate for more to come from you, right? Whatever you want to produce, it is already in you. Remember, women are born with generations living in them since they are born with their eggs. But for Hannah, it wasn't unlocked until she prayed that prayer of humility, sacrifice, and surrender. So we can see that this was Hannah's road to grace. It was truly her becoming. And I say road to grace, I'm gonna say why I said it's her road to grace, and that part truly blessed me. So when I looked up the name Hannah, Hannah means grace or favor. And remember, I said she had 5 children after. So the amount of children she had after Samuel, after she gave Samuel back to the Lord, was 5, right? And in the Bible, the number 5 also represents grace or favor. So Hannah was truly favored by God. Not only that her name meant grace or favor, but she also had 5 children after she gave back the first one to God. So Hannah was truly favored by God. And with her having her first, it ended up making her become who she was meant to be. Because every time somebody said her name, they were saying, hello, favor, hello, grace. And she actually got grace and favor from God. So that's why I said it was Hannah's road to grace. And Hannah basically gave God her first fruit, right? And with first fruit, we acknowledge that God owns everything in our lives, and first fruit help you to anticipate for what is to come. And that anticipate part also blessed me because it's like when they had the harvest and they gave their first fruit to God, it's like now we have to anticipate. We have to look for the other crop that is coming, right? When they gave their first harvest, what came after would be for themselves. So you have the anticipation that you are looking for more. So that part blessed me as well. So I just want to encourage somebody, whatever you are cooking, whatever you are trying to produce, remember that it is already in you. Yes, there are struggles to make your first one a reality, but that's because there is so much attached to your first. Your first needs to be done in humility, and God needs to get the glory out of it. When the first is given to God, have an anticipation for the more that is to come. Remember that there is more attached to your first, and you will yield more from your first. So that is what I wanted to say. That is what I wanted to encourage you about. There is a domino effect after your first. There is more that is attached to your first. And it's always scary to do the first of anything. It's always scary to be the first one in your family to do something, be the first person, even when you're in school and they're doing presentations and you have to go first. That is always scary to be the first of anything. But do not be fearful. So, with that being said, I am going to lead by example, and I'm going to make an Instagram for the podcast. So it's going to be Real Relevant Righteous underscore podcast. I'm going to put the link below, and I'm going to make my first post on Instagram. Let me tell you a secret, right? If somebody's giving you a word, right? If the word doesn't touch them first, something's wrong. The word is a two-edged sword. So when I was writing this episode, I'm like, I have to step out and do something as well. I have to realize that there is more attached to my first. So I'm going to make my first Instagram post. Probably by the time this video is out, that will be up as well. So be sure to follow me on there as well. And if this message blessed you, be sure to share it with somebody. And until next time, let's keep it real, keep it relevant, and keep it right.